It's a heartbreak for anyone to see an expensive abandoned car collecting dust in a garage or on the side of a street. It makes you wonder why the owners did that instead of either auctioning it off or even giving it away. This is just not right and definitely not fair for all of us car lovers out there. However, some of these expensive abandoned cars have an interesting story behind them. Let's have a look at these fancy cars that were let down by their owners. Trending Tenz is about the top 10 videos of all kinds. Click on the subscribe button with the bell notification. It's free and you'll never miss a notification for a new Trending Tenz video. Here's the list of the top 10 most expensive abandoned cars in the world. Number 10. Ferrari F40, $450,000. How did this red Ferrari almost turn brown? What kind of fate befell the owner of this car? Shockingly, this Ferrari F40 belonged to the eldest son of Saddam Hussein. It was last spotted in a garage in Iraq. The mechanics were afraid to fix or drive it, which is why it still sits there untouched. The Ferrari was never picked up from the garage, as the owner of this car, Uday Saddam, died before he got the chance. What's even more shocking is that he had a very large collection of cars, and this wouldn't hurt him even if the Ferrari was left there to rot and rust for eternity. A Ferrari doesn't deserve to be stored in a garage with no one to drive it. The logo itself, a horse, represents speed and durability. Ironically, this F40 Ferrari horse is sitting around not experiencing the road. Number 9. Lamborghini Countach, $500,000. This one-of-a-kind supercar didn't interest the owner, so he thought it was better to leave it abandoned. He even thought it was better to remove one rear tire and put a plank of wood for support, just to discourage the efforts of bandits and thieves. The shocking part is, it's in a public parking space in Tokyo, an area that rents out space for $430 per month. 10 months of rent on this space is more than enough to get this Lamborghini fixed up if it ever had a very serious mechanical issue. The interior still looks intact, which means this Lamborghini was once well taken care of. The seats are clean and the gear stick is doing just fine, which makes us wonder, why did the owner leave such a limited edition of the Lamborghini without a reason? Well, let's hope that he'll find the urge to drive this car once again and that the removed tire will be reunited with its brothers and sisters. Number 8. Aston Martin DB5, $580,000. How can this one-of-a-kind car end up in the woods? It definitely doesn't match the serenity around it. If it was given a few more years of abandonment, Mother Nature would have completely engulfed the supercar. As you can see, the tires have started rotting since the rear tires can't even be seen. This Aston Martin DB5 was rescued from this unthinkable misery, and some changes and repairs were made so that the car could be restored to its former glory. This was the first Aston Martin model car to be put into production with an acceleration of 0 to 100 miles per hour in less than 30 seconds. Nonetheless, after some major workouts in the garage by some experts, this car was put to auction where it was able to fetch a price that was 100 times more than the buying price. This doesn't mean that every abandoned car is this lucky. Repairing a car costs an absolute fortune. Number 7. Ferrari Enzo, $1.1 million. This rare Ferrari model is the type we usually see in music videos, and it's sitting around collecting dust. It was in a police impound lot for some period of time before fruitless announcements were made to look for the owner. The police were shocked that such a car could be sitting idle, steaming under Dubai's hot sun with no one behind the steering wheel. Nobody knows who the owner is. This unique model is one of 400 cars produced for which you needed an invitation to even have the right to buy this car when it first came out. The last model of this car to be manufactured was sold at a staggering price of $6.5 million. Now, the abandoned Ferrari has been moved to a storage unit since nobody could stand seeing it under the scorching sun, and the rightful owner has still not claimed it. Number 6. Bugatti Veyron, $1.5 million. It seems like the owner of this Bugatti gave it a ceremonial burial and covered it with some ash after it was involved in an accident. Looking at this Bugatti's rear shows it was involved in some kind of accident, so the owner thought it would be better to abandon it than repair it. So what left this Bugatti in this wrecked state in Russia? An accident on the rear passenger side was enough to end the speedy and classy road life of this Bugatti. It would have been more comforting even to clean it regularly than to let it sit there covered in dust, looking like a car-shaped island. Abandoning a Bugatti is the equivalent of taking $2 million and lighting it up so that it can turn to ash. Nobody in their right mind could do such a thing, not unless they have a fortune to last through even the next generation. Number 5. Konys Egg Trivida, $2 million. As we're talking about abandoned cars, we at least have to give this car owner some credit. He left his car in a parking garage rather than outside in the monstrous weather to endure some hard conditions. Still, the car was abandoned. It doesn't matter if it was put in a secure place. When the engine hasn't been started or cared for in more than 2 months, that's abandonment. The shocking part is that there are only 3 Konys Egg Trividas in the world, and one of them is sitting in a parking lot without an owner to claim it. A car this rare and super fast should be owned with more respect. What's even more shocking is that the company renting out the parking space had accumulated over $1,000 before the public even noticed its abandonment. Not only that, the owner of this car also bought another supercar and abandoned it. Yeah, it's like he's distributing his eggs at different places, which is kind of concerning. Number 4, 1967 Shelby Cobra 427, $2 million. This one-of-a-kind Shelby Cobra was discovered in a barn and has been collecting dust since 1991. It was left to become nothing more than housing for dust after the only mechanic the owner trusted to work on it died. The house was set to be torn down to build a new one, and the garage hadn't been touched in so long that leaves built up in the front of the doors, covering it completely. It was in fact the neighbors that showed the garage to the developers. This Cobra had succumbed to such a sad fate. The car's only owner trusted one mechanic to work on it, and the owner parked them in the garage but never found anyone else to work on them. The car had only 19,000 miles on it and was still in great condition considering it hadn't been moved in over 27 years. Number 3, 1966 Ferrari 275 GTB, $2.5 million. Here, we come across another abandoned car that was in the same barn as the Shelby Cobra 427. Clearly, the owner didn't care what happened to his 2 expensive cars, one of which was a Ferrari. The 1966 Ferrari 275 GTB was the first model of Ferraris that didn't have spiked rims. And here it is, rotting in a garage. The shocking part is, this Ferrari has just 13,000 miles on it. The silver lining is that the condition of this Ferrari is almost the same as it was in 1991 when the owner decided he wouldn't drive it anymore. It's not sagging, rusted, and the body lines are still appealing. The interior is in great shape, with the carpeting and the original blue vinyl seats not having faded over the years. You have to give the owner some credit for keeping it in such good condition, even though the engine hasn't been started in years. Number 2, Shelby Cobra Daytona, $4 million. This is the legendary American car that vanished for 30 years. This Shelby Cobra Daytona is one of 6 models manufactured. It was the first American car to beat Ferrari on its own turf. It was once engulfed by flames at Daytona. It was driven around Los Angeles by a music celebrity. And lastly, abandoned in a California storage unit for 30 years. Back then, this car was sold to the music celebrity's bodyguard for $1,000, from which it passed to his daughter. She then did the unthinkable. She hid it in a storage unit. The interesting part is that she paid rent for all those 30 years while the car was just sitting there. She even had offers to buy it, but refused everyone. Even the original manufacturer, Carroll Shelby himself. Number 1, Bugatti Type 57S, $4.5 million. Inside an eccentric doctor's garage in Gosforth, Newcastle, was a 1937 Bugatti Type 57S Adelante, one of only 17 ever made. The sporty two-seat Adelante was originally owned by racing enthusiast Earl Howe, who was the first president of the British Racing Drivers Club. He kept it for 8 years before Dr. Harold Carr bought it in 1955. He drove it for a few years, then in the early 1960s, parked it in his garage, where it remained for nearly 50 years until his death. When the doctor passed away in 2007, his nephew was left to clear out his garage, and to his shock, he found the car inside. It was offered for sale with an extensive file of correspondences documenting its history. It still has its original chassis, engine, drivetrain, and body. The car has a remarkably low mileage of 26,284 kilometers. It's highly coveted by collectors, as only 17 were ever made, and at least 4 of those are thought to belong to the Musée National de l'Automobile in Mulhouse, France. Others remain in the hands of private collectors. It was eventually sold for over $4 million.